Welcome to Thunga's Story Time. Today, we're diving into the extraordinary life of Frida Kahlo, a woman whose story is as vivid and unforgettable as her art. From childhood battles with illness to a tragic accident that changed everything, Frida transformed pain into powerful paintings that still inspire millions worldwide. She was bold, rebellious, and unapologetically herself, breaking barriers as an artist, feminist icon, and cultural symbol. Stick around as we unravel the passionate, tumultuous, and resilient journey of this legendary Mexican painter. Trust me, you've never heard Frida's story told quite like this before. Frida Kahlo, Roots of Rebellion. Chapter 1, Childhood and Early Challenges. Frida Kahlo was born on July 6, 1907, in the colorful neighborhood of Coyoacán, then a small town on the outskirts of Mexico City. Her family lived in a bright blue house later known as La Casa Azul, a place that would become the heart of her story and legacy. She was the third of four daughters born to Guillermo Kahlo, a German immigrant and photographer, and Matilda Calderón, a devout Catholic with deep Mexican and indigenous roots. Frida grew up in a home where tradition met transformation. Her father's photography business introduced her early on to art, light, and composition. While her mother upheld religious rituals and domestic order, her father nurtured a more intellectual, secular side. It was a household full of contrasts, faith and facts, quiet strength and booming laughter, European discipline and indigenous spirit. Frida was always somewhere in between, absorbing it all. At the age of 6, Frida's vibrant childhood took a sharp turn. She contracted polio, a viral disease that left her bedridden for months. When she finally recovered, her right leg was thinner and shorter than the left, a physical difference she would struggle with for the rest of her life. Children at school teased her cruelly, calling her Frida la Coja, Frida the cripple. But even at that young age, she refused to retreat into shame. Rather than hide her leg, Frida chose to exaggerate her presence. She wore colorful, flowing skirts and bold accessories. She walked with a limp, yes, but she walked with purpose. The illness left her body weakened, but it only seemed to strengthen her will. Guillermo, who also suffered from health issues, epilepsy, became her emotional anchor. He encouraged her to read, to think independently, and to engage in physical activity. He even introduced her to photography and drawing, unknowingly planting the seeds of a lifelong creative journey. Frida's mind was sharp and inquisitive. She was admitted to the prestigious National Preparatory School in Mexico City at just 15, an exceptional feat for a young woman at that time. Out of 2,000 students, only 35 were girls. But Frida never shrank from being the minority. Instead, she leaned into it. Dressed in tailored suits or traditional Tehuana dresses, she stood out deliberately. She joined a group of intellectuals and political radicals known as the Cachuchas, named after the caps they wore. They debated Marxism, poetry, and Mexican identity. They played pranks on teachers and mocked authority. And Frida was always at the center, loud, brilliant, and fearless. She originally planned to become a doctor. Anatomy fascinated her. She excelled in science, math, and drawing. She saw herself as someone who could cure bodies and understand the intricacies of life and death. But destiny had different plans. Though her early years were filled with illness and challenge, Frida never played the victim. Instead, these experiences carved out her character. She grew up knowing pain intimately, how it isolates you, how it can shape your view of the world. But she also learned how to fight, how to laugh through it, and how to take up space in rooms that weren't built for her. That same girl, once mocked for her limp, would later redefine beauty on her own terms. It's important to understand that Frida's resilience didn't emerge overnight. It was born from struggle and forged in contradiction. She was a child of two worlds, European and indigenous, masculine and feminine, traditional and revolutionary. The tension between these influences wouldn't just define her identity, it would define her art. Even in these formative years, Frida Kahlo was more than a girl with a limp. She was a force, a fire, a fighter. Her pain didn't silence her, it sharpened her voice. Her differences didn't hold her back, they made her unforgettable. The accident that changed everything. In 1925, Frida Kahlo was 18 years old and full of ambition. She had recently left her dream of becoming a doctor behind but hadn't yet discovered the full scope of her destiny as an artist. At the time, she was living a vibrant life in Mexico City, attending classes, spending time with a close-knit group of political and artistic friends, and falling in love with a fellow student, Alejandro Gomez Arias. Frida was intelligent, quick-witted, and full of passion. Though her childhood had been marked by illness, she had grown into a fiercely independent young woman. She had plans, opinions, and a future ahead of her, one that seemed limitless. That illusion shattered on September 17, 1925. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. Frida and Alejandro boarded a wooden bus to head home after school. The bus was crowded and slow, trudging through the narrow streets of Mexico City. Just moments after they sat down, a streetcar crashed violently into the side of the bus. The impact was catastrophic. The vehicle was crushed, passengers thrown like rag dolls. Several people died on the spot. Frida did not die. But what happened to her was so horrific, so brutal, that surviving it was almost miraculous. A metal handrail from the bus impaled her body, entering through her hip and exiting through her pelvis. Her spinal column was broken in 3 places. Her collarbone was fractured. Her right leg was shattered in 11 spots. Her pelvis was crushed. Her right foot was dislocated and completely mangled. Her abdomen and uterus were pierced. As she lay in the wreckage, bleeding and barely conscious, her clothes were torn and soaked in blood, mixed with gold dust that had spilled from a nearby passenger's shopping bag. Witnesses later said she looked like a broken doll dipped in glitter. Doctors were certain she wouldn't make it. But she did. Not only did she survive the initial trauma, but she also lived through months of excruciating recovery, multiple surgeries, and endless complications. She was bedridden for weeks, then strapped into a full-body plaster corset to immobilize her spine. She could barely move. She was in constant pain. The girl who once planned to heal others now had to fight for her own life. The physical pain was unimaginable. But for Frida, the emotional toll was just as devastating. Her body had been irrevocably altered. Her dreams of becoming a doctor were gone. Her romantic relationship with Alejandro faltered under the strain. Her future, once so full of possibility, now looked like an endless stretch of suffering. She was isolated, angry, and heartbroken. But she was also alive. And it was during this time of darkness that something extraordinary began to happen. Confined to her bed, surrounded by mirrors mounted on the ceiling and walls, Frida started to paint. Her parents built a special easel that allowed her to work while lying down. With nowhere to go and nothing to lose, she turned her gaze inward. She painted what she saw in the mirror, herself. Her face became her first subject, her pain her first palette. In later years, Frida would say, "I paint myself because I am so often alone and because I am the subject I know best." This was not vanity, it was survival. Her first self-portraits were raw and expressive, simple in form but deep in emotion. They weren't just pictures. They were declarations. I am here. I exist. I am more than this pain. The bus accident didn't just change Frida's body. It changed the course of her life. It pushed her inward, forced her to explore the boundaries of her mind, and gave her the urgency to express what words couldn't hold. Before the accident, Frida had been passionate and political. After the accident, she became ferociously introspective and unapologetically honest. There was no room for pretense. In many ways, the trauma birthed the artist. Over the next few years, as she continued to recover, Frida painted prolifically. Her early works were intimate, filled with symbolism, rich colors, and emotional weight. Even when her body failed her, her spirit persisted. Each brushstroke became an act of rebellion, a way to claim space in a world that had tried to destroy her. But survival came with a price. Frida would suffer from chronic pain for the rest of her life. The injuries to her spine and pelvis made it difficult for her to walk, to stand, or to bear children. The metal rod that tore through her uterus likely caused the miscarriages that would haunt her for decades. Her medical records became a tragic diary of surgeries, corsets, braces, and relentless agony. Yet through it all, she painted what the world later came to know as the signature Frida Kahlo style, a mix of surrealism, symbolism, and Mexican folk art, began in that bed, in that moment of ruin. Her work became a living testimony of her resilience, her suffering, and her unbreakable sense of self. Painting as therapy, painting as voice. The months after the accident moved slowly, painfully, and with a kind of stillness that could drive the strongest mind to despair. Frida Kahlo, once so full of energy and motion, was now confined to a bed, trapped in a broken body stitched together by surgeries, corsets, and steel rods. But even as her body was immobilized, her inner world began to stir with a force no injury could contain. It was in this crucible of pain that Frida turned toward something unexpected: painting. Her parents, who watched helplessly as their daughter struggled with agony, took a small but profound step. They built her a special easel, one that could rest on her bed and tilt vertically so she could paint while lying flat. Her father also brought her brushes, paints, and a mirror mounted above her bed. At first, Frida stared into that mirror out of boredom. But slowly, as days turned into weeks, that reflection became her subject, her rival, her companion, and ultimately, her muse. She began to paint self-portraits. Not the kind that flattered or idealized, but ones that exposed. What Frida saw in that mirror wasn't just her face, it was the face of a survivor. The eyes looking back at her were full of pain, defiance, confusion, and relentless life. Her early works were simple in technique but rich in meaning. In them, we begin to see what would become Frida's trademark, a fusion of physical suffering and emotional intensity, rendered with bold colors and unwavering honesty. One of her first completed works from this period, Self-Portrait in a Velvet Dress, 1926, shows a young woman elegant and poised, with dark eyes that challenge the viewer. There is beauty in the painting, but also a sense of quiet sadness, a longing that hovers between the strokes. Though it was intended as a gift to her former lover Alejandro, it also reads as a declaration: I am still here. I matter. I am whole in ways you cannot see. Painting was never a hobby for Frida, it was salvation. Her canvas didn't just carry color, it carried her grief, her rage, her endurance. Every brushstroke was a confrontation with the parts of her life she could not control. She painted to understand herself, to make sense of a world that had changed without her consent. And in that process, her art became her voice. Art critics often describe Frida's work as surreal, but she famously rejected the label. I never paint dreams or nightmares, she once said. I paint my own reality. For her, reality was already strange and violent enough. There was no need for fantasy, her life provided all the symbolism she would ever need. Her physical pain, ever present, manifested in her paintings through imagery that blended anatomy, folklore, and personal mythology. Hearts torn open, roots sprouting from limbs, veins like vines, these were not abstract metaphors but visual languages for her lived experience. She explored her medical trauma openly and often. Her canvases became visual autopsies of a body in revolt, and a soul refusing to surrender. As her health allowed, Frida also began reading more deeply. She devoured philosophy, poetry, and political theory. Marx, Freud, and Mexican poets stirred something inside her. Her intellectual life, once paused by the accident, resumed with renewed intensity. She thought about death, about revolution, about womanhood, and about Mexico. These ideas, once academic, now burned through her veins and bled into her brush. Still, there were long stretches of solitude. Her friends were moving on with their lives, studying, working, marrying. Frida was stuck, caught between a past that had shattered and a future not yet imagined. Painting, in this space of limbo, was her only path forward. It gave structure to her days and meaning to her isolation. There was something deeply radical in what Frida was doing. At a time when women were expected to be silent sufferers, she painted her pain with unapologetic vividness. While other artists created idealized versions of the female form, Frida confronted her physical reality head-on: corsets, crutches, disfigurement, blood. And yet, even with all the imagery of suffering, her work was not defeatist. It was resilient. She painted her scars not to be pitied, but to be seen. Frida didn't know it then, but she was inventing something entirely new, a way to merge biography and painting, body and soul, womanhood and politics. She didn't separate her life from her art. Her life was the art. As the years passed, she would refine her style. She would absorb Mexican folk traditions, Catholic symbolism, indigenous colors, and European techniques. But the raw emotional honesty that she developed in that bed, when she was broken and unsure and painting just to survive, would never leave her work. It would become her most powerful tool. And more importantly, it gave her agency. She could not undo the accident. She could not repair her uterus or unshatter her spine. But she could turn that trauma into color, into texture, into truth. Each portrait became a declaration of existence, not just as a woman or a Mexican, but as someone who refused to disappear into a silence of her suffering. Her art said, "This is me. This is what it looks like to live with pain. And this is what it means to fight back, not with swords, but with brushes." By the time Frida was strong enough to walk again, slowly and with a cane, she was no longer the same girl. The world had broken her, and in response, she had created one of her own. A tumultuous love, Diego Rivera. By the late 1920s, Frida Kahlo had moved beyond the immediate shadows of her accident, emerging as a young artist with a bold and unmistakable voice. But it was not just her art that would define this period of her life, it was also a love that would be as intense, complicated, and bruising as the brush strokes on her canvases. In 1929, Frida married Diego Rivera, already Mexico's most renowned and celebrated muralist. Diego was a towering figure in the art world, both literally and figuratively. His massive stature, booming personality, and political fervor made him a force to be reckoned with. At 43, he was nearly twice Frida's age, a man whose fame and career cast a long shadow. Yet, there was something about Frida's fierce spirit and originality that captivated him. Their meeting felt almost inevitable, a collision of two strong, passionate souls shaped by the same country's turmoil, culture, and revolutionary ideals. Diego was a member of the Mexican Communist Party, deeply committed to social justice and national identity. Frida, equally politically engaged, found in Diego not only a lover but a mentor, a protector, and a catalyst for her artistic evolution. But from the very beginning, their relationship was far from simple. Diego's personality was larger than life, as magnetic as it was volatile. Their marriage was a whirlwind of passion and conflict, a constant oscillation between tenderness and tempest. Diego was openly unfaithful, carrying on affairs with other women, some of whom were close friends of Frida. The betrayals cut deeply, cutting across the fragile hope Frida held for love and stability. Yet, Frida was not a woman to silently endure. She confronted Diego's infidelities head-on, responding with a mix of heartbreak and fiery independence. She too engaged in affairs, refusing to be defined by conventional roles or expectations. Their love was not the gentle kind, it was a battlefield marked by jealousy, raw emotions, and repeated heartbreak. Despite the chaos, Diego encouraged Frida's art in ways few others did. He recognized her talent and pushed her to pursue it seriously. Under his influence, Frida began to integrate broader themes of Mexican identity, folklore, and politics into her work. Diego introduced her to prominent intellectuals, artists, and political figures, expanding her world far beyond her small circle. Frida's paintings during these years often reflected the tumult of her marriage, interweaving symbols of love and pain, union and division, hope and despair. Works like The Two Fridas, 1939, arguably her most famous self-portrait, visually express the fractured identity she experienced as both a lover and an individual, two halves of herself connected and torn apart. Interestingly, Frida once famously said that there were two major accidents in her life, the bus accident and Diego Rivera. While the first physically scarred her, the second emotionally shaped her in profound and lasting ways. Diego was both muse and tormentor, source of strength and source of sorrow. Their relationship was a crucible that forged much of the emotional intensity and complexity found in Frida's art. The couple's political lives were also deeply intertwined. Both were committed communists, engaged in a struggle for social change in Mexico and beyond. Their activism was inseparable from their artistic endeavors. Diego's murals, grand and public, celebrated the working class and indigenous heritage. Frida's work, though smaller in scale, carried equally revolutionary messages about gender, identity, suffering, and resilience. Their life together was marked by frequent separations, partly due to Diego's work and partly due to the emotional storms that buffeted their marriage. Frida traveled to the United States with Diego, where she experienced feelings of alienation and homesickness but also encountered new artistic influences. The cultural dissonance of being a proud Mexican artist in a foreign land deepened her sense of identity and intensified her commitment to expressing her roots. Back in Mexico, their home, Casa Azul, the Blue House, became a vibrant center of creativity, politics, and friendship. It was both sanctuary and stage for their complicated lives. Surrounded by Mexican folk art, indigenous crafts, and political icons, Frida developed her unique visual language, one that blended personal pain with cultural pride. Despite the hardships, their connection endured for decades. Their marriage was formally dissolved in 1939 but rekindled a year later. This cyclical pattern of union and separation reflected the passionate but often destructive nature of their bond. Frida and Diego's relationship was more than just a romantic saga. It was a profound exploration of love's complexity, the tensions between creativity and chaos, and the struggle for identity and autonomy within intimacy. For Frida, loving Diego Rivera was as much a source of inspiration as it was of anguish. Their love story would continue to captivate the world long after both had passed, emblematic of the very contradictions that make human relationships so powerful. In the end, Frida Kahlo's life and art cannot be understood without Diego Rivera. He was her greatest influence and her most painful challenge. Their intertwined destinies reflect the collision of Mexico's past and future, the personal and political, the beauty and brutality of life itself. Time in the U.S. and cultural identity. After marrying Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo's life took her far beyond the vibrant streets and colors of Mexico City. Diego's ambitious projects led them across the border into the United States, where the two artists would live and work in cities like San Francisco, Detroit, and New York. This chapter of Frida's life, marked by geographic dislocation, brought new challenges, new insights, and a deepening of the themes that would come to define her work. From the moment Frida set foot in the United States, she felt a palpable sense of alienation. America in the 1930s was a world apart from the Mexico she knew. The language, the customs, the urban landscapes, and the social attitudes all felt foreign and, at times, hostile. For Frida, who wore her Mexican identity like a badge of honor, this cultural distance was a constant reminder of her outsider status. While Diego was embraced as a celebrity muralist, earning commissions that brought him fame and fortune, Frida's own work initially struggled to find a foothold in the American art scene. Despite her undeniable talent, she was often overshadowed by Diego's larger-than-life persona. The art world in the U.S. at that time was dominated by different aesthetics and politics, and her deeply personal, often painful style did not easily fit into prevailing trends. This tension intensified her feelings of isolation. Frida was often homesick, missing the warmth of Mexican culture, the colors, the smells, the music, and the traditions that had shaped her since childhood. At the same time, she was caught in the complicated role of a political artist trying to make sense of two very different worlds. It was in this liminal space, between Mexico and the United States, between belonging and estrangement, that Frida's art took on new layers of meaning. Her paintings from this period are some of her most haunting and emotionally charged works. They pulse with loneliness, longing, and a fierce assertion of cultural pride. One of the most poignant examples is her painting Henry Ford Hospital, 1932, created during her time in Detroit. This work starkly reveals Frida's physical and emotional pain following a miscarriage. In the painting, Frida lies on a hospital bed surrounded by surreal, symbolic images: a fetus, a pelvic bone, a snail, and a flower, floating around her like haunting reminders of loss and fragility. The imagery is visceral and unflinching, capturing not only her personal suffering but also the alienation of being far from home during her darkest moments. Despite the hardships, Frida's time in the U.S. also exposed her to new artistic currents and communities. She connected with leftist intellectuals, fellow Mexican expatriates, and American artists who admired her work. She exhibited in galleries, met figures such as Georgia O'Keeffe, and even caught the attention of collectors and critics intrigued by her unique voice. Yet, it was her Mexican heritage that remained the core of her identity and creativity. During this period, Frida's paintings increasingly incorporated powerful symbols from Mexican culture: bright textiles, pre-Columbian motifs, religious iconography, and folk art traditions. These elements were not just decorative, they were acts of cultural resistance and affirmation. In a country that often exoticized or misunderstood Mexican culture, Frida reclaimed it on her own terms. She wore traditional Tehuana dresses, braided her hair with ribbons and flowers, and integrated indigenous elements into her self-portraits. This visual language asserted a proud, complex identity, one that refused to be erased or simplified. Her work from the U.S. years is a testament to the struggle for belonging that so many immigrants and exiles know well. It speaks to the pain of separation, the quest for self-definition, and the resilience required to maintain cultural roots in an unfamiliar land. Her paintings became a bridge between continents, between personal pain and collective history, between the past she loved and the uncertain present. The more time Frida spent away from Mexico, the more deeply she realized how integral her homeland was to her sense of self. Her art during this time is like a visual diary of longing, sometimes melancholic, sometimes defiant, always honest. It reveals a woman grappling with loss and displacement but fiercely connected to her heritage. In many ways, these years shaped Frida's legacy. Her ability to merge the intensely personal with the culturally specific made her work resonate far beyond Mexico's borders. She became not only a symbol of Mexican identity but also a universal icon of strength, pain, and authenticity. When Frida and Diego eventually returned to Mexico, she brought back with her a sharpened artistic vision and an even stronger commitment to her roots. Her time in the United States, while fraught with difficulties, had deepened her understanding of who she was, and who she wanted to be, as an artist and as a woman. In the end, Frida Kahlo's experience in the U.S. highlights the complex interplay between displacement and identity, how distance can both wound and clarify, how culture can be both a comfort and a battleground. Her art from this period remains a powerful reminder of the ways in which we carry our heritage with us, no matter where life takes us. Returning home and finding her style. After years of living abroad and grappling with both personal and artistic challenges, Frida Kahlo finally returned to Mexico, her true home and the wellspring of her identity. This return marked a pivotal turning point in her life and career. Freed from the alienation she had felt in the United States and emboldened by her experiences, Frida began to fully develop and embrace the artistic style that would ultimately make her an icon, not just in Mexico, but around the world. Mexico welcomed her back not just as a native daughter but as a burgeoning artist with a unique and powerful vision. She took up residence once again in the Blue House, Casa Azul, in Coyoacán, a vibrant neighborhood on the outskirts of Mexico City. This blue-walled home would become much more than a place to live. It became a sanctuary, a studio, and a symbol of her life and legacy. In this beloved Casa Azul, Frida surrounded herself with the colors and textures of Mexico, bright textiles, indigenous crafts, and folk art. She nurtured her connection to Mexican culture not only through her environment but also through her own personal style. Frida adopted the traditional Tehuana dress, a striking regional costume from the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, which she wore proudly and frequently. The bold patterns, flowing skirts, and elaborate braided hairstyles adorned with ribbons and fresh flowers became part of her unmistakable public image. But this was more than fashion or cultural homage, it was a declaration of identity and defiance. In a world that often sought to diminish or stereotype Mexican culture, Frida reclaimed her heritage as a source of strength and pride. Her appearance was an extension of her art, a living canvas that expressed the complexity of her identity, indigenous roots, womanhood, and resilience. Artistically, Frida's return to Mexico signaled the full flowering of her style, a brilliant, evocative fusion of surrealism, Mexican folk traditions, and deeply personal symbolism. While many have labeled her a surrealist, Frida herself resisted this classification, insisting that she did not paint dreams but her own reality. Her paintings often depict raw and painful truths about her body, her emotions, and her experiences, all filtered through the lens of Mexican cultural motifs. Her work from this period is characterized by vivid colors, bold lines, and a striking interplay of symbolism and narrative. Frida's self-portraits, in particular, stand out as complex visual stories. They often feature elements from Mexican mythology, Catholic iconography, and indigenous traditions, woven together with intimate details from her own life, her physical suffering, her love and heartbreak, and her fierce independence. In the Two Fridas, 1939, painted shortly after her first divorce from Diego Rivera, she presents a dual image of herself, one dressed in European attire, the other in traditional Tehuana dress, holding hands yet separated by a visible artery. This painting vividly captures her struggle between different cultural identities and emotional states, and it remains one of her most iconic and studied works. Casa Azul was more than a home, it was a living testament to Frida's creative spirit. Filled with vibrant colors, plants, Mexican art, and the personal artifacts that told the story of her life, the house became a symbol of her artistic world. She painted many of her works within its walls, turning the space into a creative refuge amid the ongoing challenges of her health and personal life. Frida's body, marked by lifelong pain and injury, was also a central theme in her art and identity. She used her own physical experiences as raw material for her paintings, transforming suffering into powerful visual metaphors. In this way, her body became both subject and canvas, a living emblem of endurance and self-expression. Through her unique style, Frida challenged traditional notions of beauty, femininity, and Mexican identity. She embraced imperfection and pain, portraying herself with unflinching honesty, thick eyebrows, mustache, scars, and all. Her unapologetic self-representation was revolutionary, especially for women artists of her time. Her embrace of indigenous culture extended beyond aesthetics to political and social statements. Frida celebrated the history and dignity of Mexico's native peoples, often positioning herself within this lineage through her art and public persona. In doing so, she contributed to a broader movement of cultural nationalism that sought to redefine Mexican identity in the post-revolutionary era. Despite ongoing health struggles and the complexities of her marriage to Diego Rivera, Frida's artistic output flourished. Her paintings gained increasing recognition both in Mexico and internationally, solidifying her reputation as a bold and original voice. Ultimately, Frida Kahlo's return to Mexico and the development of her distinctive style was a profound act of self-realization. It was a reclaiming of her narrative and her culture, a celebration of both vulnerability and strength. The Casa Azul, her wardrobe, and her paintings together created a cohesive and powerful statement of identity that continues to inspire and resonate today. Physical pain and creative resilience. Frida Kahlo's life was marked not only by extraordinary artistic brilliance but also by relentless physical suffering. From her earliest years, her body was a battleground, enduring pain that most could scarcely imagine. Yet, despite the numerous surgeries, chronic conditions, and debilitating injuries she faced, Frida never allowed her physical challenges to silence her creative spirit. Instead, they fueled it, transforming pain into powerful art that continues to captivate audiences worldwide. Frida's health struggles began in childhood when she contracted polio at age 6, which left her right leg thinner and weaker than her left. However, the true turning point came in 1925, when a tragic bus accident shattered her spine, pelvis, ribs, and collarbone, among other injuries. Doctors warned her she might never walk again. The months of recovery were grueling, forcing her into long periods of immobility and isolation. But these hardships only strengthened her determination to live and to create. Over the next 3 decades, Frida would endure more than 30 surgeries. Each procedure brought hope of relief, but also fresh trauma. The damage from the accident caused her endless pain, nerve damage, and infections. In her later years, complications from gangrene resulted in the amputation of part of her right leg. Despite this, Frida's resilience never wavered. She continued to paint even from her hospital bed, sometimes lying down or propped up by pillows, using a special easel designed for her unique needs. Pain was a constant companion, but it was also a source of raw inspiration. Frida's art became a direct reflection of her suffering, both physical and emotional. She refused to mask or soften the truth of her experiences. Instead, her paintings confront the viewer with unfiltered images of wounds, scars, and bodily fragility. Through this honest portrayal, Frida broke taboos surrounding illness, disability, and female pain, making the invisible visible. One of the most striking aspects of Frida's creative resilience is how her work grew more intense and defiant over time. While earlier pieces might explore her suffering with a tentative touch, her later paintings embrace pain as a core part of her identity. She wove her body's wounds into symbolic narratives, blending personal torment with universal themes of mortality, endurance, and transformation. In works like The Broken Column, 1944, Frida depicts herself as a fractured figure split open to reveal a crumbling ionic column where her spine should be, nails piercing her flesh, tears streaming down her face. The barren desert landscape behind her echoes the isolation she felt. This image captures the paradox of vulnerability and strength, her body broken, yet her spirit unyielding. Her resilience was not only physical but also psychological. The ongoing pain and limitations she faced could have led to despair or withdrawal. Instead, Frida channeled her emotions into her art, making her creative process a form of survival. Painting was her language when words failed, her therapy when medicine could only do so much. This relentless pursuit of creativity despite adversity made Frida a symbol of courage for many. She embodied the idea that suffering need not be silenced or hidden but can be transformed into something beautiful, meaningful, and powerful. Her work resonates deeply with anyone who has faced hardship, chronic illness, or disability. Frida's artistic defiance also extended beyond her self-portraits to include explorations of gender, identity, and politics. Even as her body weakened, her paintings became bolder, challenging societal expectations of women and artists. She used her own image to question notions of femininity and beauty, portraying herself with unapologetic authenticity, including her unibrow, mustache, and physical scars. Despite her personal trials, Frida remained engaged with the world around her. She continued to participate in exhibitions, political activities, and cultural discussions, often from her hospital bed or wheelchair. Her spirit of resilience inspired not only her contemporaries but generations to come. Ultimately, Frida Kahlo's life story is a testament to the power of creative resilience, the capacity to find meaning, purpose, and expression in the face of overwhelming pain. Her legacy transcends her art. It lies in her example of perseverance, honesty, and fierce self-expression. Through her paintings, Frida invites us to confront our own vulnerabilities and to recognize the strength that lies within them. Her journey reminds us that art can be both a mirror and a healing force, a way to transform suffering into beauty, and pain into enduring power. Politics and purpose. Frida Kahlo was much more than an artist known for her vivid self-portraits and striking exploration of pain. She was also a fiercely political figure whose beliefs and activism shaped her life and work. Her commitment to political ideals was as intense and uncompromising as her approach to art. For Frida, the two were inseparable. Art was not only a form of personal expression but also a powerful tool for social change and resistance. From early on, Frida embraced communism, identifying with its ideals of equality, justice, and solidarity with the oppressed. Living through the turbulent times of the Mexican Revolution's aftermath and the global rise of political ideologies, she saw firsthand the struggles faced by workers, indigenous peoples, and women. These realities deeply influenced her worldview and infused her creative output with a sense of purpose beyond aesthetics. Frida's political convictions were not confined to private belief, they were boldly public and unapologetic. She engaged actively with Mexico's Communist Party, attended rallies, and opened her home to prominent leftist intellectuals, artists, and activists, including the likes of Leon Trotsky during his exile. Her passionate engagement with political discourse was intertwined with her personal relationships and artistic collaborations. Her marriage to Diego Rivera, a leading figure in Mexican muralism and a prominent communist, also positioned her at the heart of political and cultural debates. Together, they championed indigenous rights, workers' struggles, and anti-imperialist causes. Yet Frida maintained her distinct voice and identity, using her art to challenge power structures from a uniquely personal and feminist perspective. Frida's art became a form of political commentary, often directly confronting issues of colonialism, social inequality, and national identity. She believed that art should serve the people, not just the elite or the privileged few. Her paintings frequently incorporated Mexican indigenous symbols, revolutionary imagery, and critiques of capitalist exploitation. Through this symbolism, she sought to reconnect Mexican culture with its roots and empower those marginalized by history. One of her notable politically charged works is Self-Portrait on the Borderline Between Mexico and the United States, 1932. This painting visually contrasts the industrialized, mechanized world of the United States with the rich, natural, and indigenous traditions of Mexico. It reflects her deep ambivalence about modernity and imperialism, as well as her pride in Mexican heritage. Through vivid imagery, she exposes the cultural tensions and economic disparities she witnessed firsthand. Frida also used her art to express her feminist ideals, challenging traditional gender roles and celebrating female strength and autonomy. Her unapologetic self-portraits, with unibrow and mustache intact, disrupted conventional standards of beauty and femininity. In this way, she asserted a political stance on identity, body autonomy, and the right to define oneself outside patriarchal norms. Despite her health struggles, Frida remained an outspoken activist. She spoke out against fascism, imperialism, and social injustice at a time when such positions could be risky, especially for a woman artist. Her political courage was part of her broader resilience, a determination to live and create on her own terms. Frida's political legacy is inseparable from her artistic one. Her life and work exemplify how art can serve as both personal therapy and collective resistance. She wielded her brush like a weapon, confronting pain, injustice, and oppression with vivid color and fierce honesty. This intersection of politics and purpose continues to inspire activists, artists, and feminists around the globe. Through her passionate commitment to social justice, Frida Kahlo not only carved out a place for herself in art history but also became a symbol of defiance and hope for marginalized communities. She reminds us that art can be a force for change, not only reflecting society but actively shaping it. The first solo exhibition in Mexico. By 1953, Frida Kahlo's life had become a poignant blend of extraordinary artistic achievement and relentless physical struggle. Despite enduring decades of pain and numerous surgeries, she remained passionately committed to her art and her audience. That year marked a historic milestone, Frida's first solo exhibition in Mexico City. It was an event that not only celebrated her unique artistic vision but also underscored her indomitable spirit. The road to this exhibition was paved with hardship. Frida's health had deteriorated significantly. Years of complications from her bus accident and multiple surgeries culminated in severe mobility issues. She was often confined to her hospital bed or wheelchair, in constant pain. Many might have retreated into solitude, but Frida's resolve was different. She refused to let her physical limitations define her existence or diminish her presence in the art world. When the invitation for a solo exhibition was extended, Frida knew she had to be there, no matter the cost. Walking into the gallery was impossible, but arriving on an ambulance and participating fully, bed and all, was a powerful statement of resilience and defiance. She insisted that her hospital bed be placed in the very center of the gallery space, transforming it into a throne of triumph amid her vibrant works. The exhibition itself was a bold assertion of Frida's artistic identity. It showcased a retrospective of her self-portraits and symbolic paintings that had captivated audiences worldwide. But what made this event truly unforgettable was Frida's presence, lying in her bed, surrounded by the art that was both an extension of herself and a testament to her battles. Guests, critics, and admirers were moved not only by the paintings but by the sight of Frida, her bright traditional Tehuana attire, the flowers adorning her hair, her unmistakable unibrow and mustache, all presented with radiant humor and warmth despite her suffering. She laughed, toasted to art and life, and engaged with visitors, defying expectations of illness and frailty. This exhibition was more than a showcase, it was a living symbol of Frida's belief that art transcends the physical body. Even as her own body was weakened and broken, her creative energy remained vibrant and commanding. She challenged societal notions of disability and the artist's role, demonstrating that true artistry comes from the spirit as much as the hand. The critical reception of the show was overwhelmingly positive. Mexican intellectuals and art lovers recognized the depth and originality of her work, celebrating her as a national treasure. For many, this exhibition marked a turning point in the appreciation of Frida Kahlo's art within her homeland, elevating her status from a talented painter to a cultural icon. More poignantly, the exhibition was a personal victory. Despite years of medical crises and physical pain, Frida stood, or rather lay, at the center of the art world, in control of her narrative. It was a triumphant moment that underscored her philosophy, that life, no matter how painful or challenging, is to be embraced fully and creatively. The 1953 exhibition remains a landmark in art history, remembered not only for the works displayed but for the extraordinary courage of the artist herself. It encapsulates the essence of Frida Kahlo, her ability to confront suffering head-on and transform it into enduring beauty and meaning. Her presence at the exhibition sent a message that continues to resonate. Art is not just about creation but about survival, identity, and the unbreakable human spirit. Frida Kahlo's first solo show in Mexico was a celebration of all these truths, a final public act of the woman who lived her art, and her pain, with fearless honesty and grace. Death and everlasting legacy. In 1954, at the age of 47, Frida Kahlo passed away, a moment that marked the end of a life filled with extraordinary struggle and artistic brilliance. Yet, rather than fading into obscurity, Frida's legacy only grew stronger, spreading far beyond the borders of Mexico to become a global phenomenon. Today, she is remembered not merely as a painter but as a profound symbol of resilience, self-expression, cultural pride, and feminist strength. Frida's death came after years of physical suffering. The cumulative toll of her numerous surgeries, chronic pain, and deteriorating health eventually claimed her life. Yet, even in her final days, she remained fiercely committed to her art and her beliefs. Her passing left a void in the art world, but it also sparked a renewed interest in her life's work, a testament to the power and universality of her story. In the decades following her death, Frida's paintings found new audiences and deeper appreciation. Museums and galleries around the world began exhibiting her works, showcasing her distinctive style and emotional intensity. Her art resonated with people from diverse backgrounds, those who saw in her paintings a reflection of their own struggles, identities, and dreams. One of the reasons Frida's legacy endures is the raw honesty with which she portrayed her life's pain and passion. Unlike many artists who separate themselves from their work, Frida made her art an extension of her soul. Her self-portraits reveal not only her physical injuries but also her emotional landscape, including themes of love, loss, identity, and political conviction. This vulnerability, combined with her bold use of symbolism and Mexican folk art, made her paintings uniquely powerful and deeply relatable. Frida also became an enduring feminist icon. At a time when women artists were often marginalized, she asserted her identity unapologetically, embracing her flaws, her sexuality, and her complex emotions. Her defiance of traditional gender norms and her insistence on self-definition inspired generations of women to reclaim their voices and bodies. Her image, with her unibrow, mustache, and floral adornments, has become a global emblem of female empowerment and authenticity. Culturally, Frida is a symbol of Mexican pride and heritage. She celebrated indigenous traditions and clothing, making them central to her identity and her art. This celebration of Mexican culture resonated deeply during a time when the country was undergoing rapid modernization and cultural shifts. For many, she represents a bridge between the past and the present, honoring roots while confronting contemporary realities. Beyond art and culture, Frida Kahlo's story is one of human resilience. She endured unimaginable pain yet transformed that suffering into something beautiful and meaningful. Her life teaches us about the power of creativity to heal and the strength of the human spirit to persevere. This message continues to inspire artists, activists, and everyday people worldwide. Frida's legacy also lives on through countless books, films, and exhibitions that explore her life and art. She has become a subject of fascination not only for art historians but also for popular culture. Her image adorns everything from fashion to murals to tattoos, making her one of the most recognizable artists of the 20th century. In essence, Frida Kahlo transcended her time and circumstances to become a timeless icon. Her life and work remind us that even in the face of profound adversity, we can express our truths, challenge norms, and leave a lasting impact. Her story is a celebration of individuality, courage, and the enduring power of art to connect and transform. As we look back on her journey, from the spirited child in Coyoacán to the international symbol of strength and creativity, we see a woman who refused to be defined by her pain or her limits. Instead, Frida Kahlo chose to define herself through her art, her beliefs, and her unyielding spirit. That choice continues to inspire and empower millions around the world, making her legacy truly everlasting. Frida Kahlo, the cultural icon. Frida Kahlo's name has become synonymous with boldness, resilience, and unapologetic self-expression. Her unmistakable image, characterized by her thick, expressive eyebrows, intricately braided hair adorned with colorful flowers, and her vibrant traditional Mexican clothing, has transcended the art world to become a global cultural symbol. From fashion runways to tattoo studios, from political protests to popular media, Frida's likeness is everywhere, representing a spirit that refuses to be silenced or marginalized. But Frida's iconic status didn't emerge overnight. It grew from a lifetime of living vividly and courageously, despite overwhelming challenges. Her physical suffering, emotional struggles, and complex personal relationships shaped a woman whose life was as compelling as her paintings. Yet, it was her fierce honesty and refusal to conform that truly set her apart, making her story resonate deeply with people around the world. Frida's look itself is a powerful statement. Her strong, connected eyebrows challenged traditional notions of female beauty. While many women were pressured to adhere to delicate, conventional standards, Frida embraced her natural features, celebrating her uniqueness. Her braided hair, often intertwined with bright flowers, paid homage to indigenous Mexican culture and symbolized fertility, vitality, and connection to the earth. Her colorful Tehuana dresses were more than fashion choices, they were declarations of identity and cultural pride. Her image, repeated and reinterpreted countless times, has become a symbol of difference and authenticity. For many, Frida Kahlo stands for honesty, the courage to show one's true self, including the flaws and scars that society often tries to hide. She reminds us that beauty is not about perfection but about truth and resilience. In art, Frida's legacy continues to inspire generations. Her self-portraits remain some of the most recognizable and emotionally raw works in the modern art canon. Artists around the globe look to her as a model of how to turn personal pain into universal expression, how to blend cultural traditions with avant-garde techniques, and how to use art as a form of political and personal resistance. Beyond art, Frida has become a figure embraced by social movements worldwide. Feminists see her as a trailblazer who embodied female empowerment long before the term became widespread. Her life story encourages women to claim their strength, autonomy, and voice. LGBTQ+ communities also identify with Frida's fluid and complex identity, finding in her a symbol of breaking free from rigid societal norms. Frida's image is not only a fashion statement or a political symbol, it is also a reminder of human courage. Her life was marked by unimaginable physical pain and emotional hardship, yet she chose to live vividly, to love fiercely, and to create boldly. This unyielding spirit is what makes her unforgettable. In countless murals, posters, and cultural festivals, Frida's image continues to inspire new generations. She is a beacon for those who dare to be different, those who choose honesty over conformity, and those who find strength in vulnerability. Ultimately, Frida Kahlo's legacy is a celebration of life itself, in all its complexity, pain, and beauty. She shows us that a life well lived is one that embraces every aspect of our humanity. That is why, Decades after her passing, she remains not just an artist remembered but a cultural icon beloved worldwide. Her story encourages us all to face life with bravery and authenticity, to find beauty in our scars, and to express our truths unapologetically. Frida Kahlo's life wasn't easy, but it was vivid, brave, and entirely her own. And that is what makes her truly unforgettable. Thanks for joining me on Thunga's Story Time as we explored the incredible life of Frida Kahlo, a true icon of strength, creativity, and fearless self-expression. Her story reminds us that even through pain and struggle, we can create something unforgettable. If you love this deep dive into Frida's world, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story that inspires, empowers, and surprises. Got a favorite story or figure you want me to cover? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep embracing your own story with courage and heart.